My name is John McDonnell. I'm the Member of Parliament for Hayes and Harlington. I'm a Labour MP. We've been doing these series of meetings for the last few weeks in the run-up to the election of a new General Secretary for UNISON. And I'm a UNISON member. I have been UNISON member since the union was founded. Before that, I was in NUPE. I was a NUPE shop steward. So it shows you how far I go back and how old I am, but there you are. Anyway, Paul Holmes decided to stand for becoming General Secretary. In fact, many of us, he didn't really decide, we urged him to stand for General Secretary. Because this is such an important election. In fact, for me, it's the most important election our union has faced, certainly since I've been a member, because it will determine the future of our union. And this is such a critical time. Well, all of you know that. All of you know what we're facing in terms of not just the pandemic and the outcome of that pandemic, but also its implications for the economy and also the implications for all our public services, the demands that are being placed on all of you, and unfortunately, the denial of resources, certainly over the last decade, and also the lack of resources despite the increased responsibilities that have been placed on all your shoulders and the stress that that's caused so many of our members. So we need a strong union. We need a union that is representing its members strongly, firmly, yes, constructively and very pragmatically, but we need a union actually that really takes into account our views as members. And Paul was standing as the members' candidate. We've called him, every meeting I've done, that's what people have referred to him at. He's our candidate. He's standing on behalf of the members, and he's, I think, doing exactly the right thing, which is you become a General Secretary. Yes, it's a powerful position, but the whole point of Paul's campaign is to say, yes, I want to become General Secretary, but I want to give that power away. I want to give it back to the members. I want to give it back to the branches, and I want to make sure they're properly resourced to do their job, particularly in this difficult times. And we've seen in terms of what's happening with police resources, and we've seen about what's happening in terms of the additional burdens that have been placed on all of you in the services that you provide. In fact, you're all unsung heroes in many respects. And what Paul will be able to do is, I think, as General Secretary, ensure this union is returned to its members, make sure that we have, well, his priorities will be our priorities, and that we're firm in our negotiations and our representations to employers and to government and others about what we need, and always backing up our members and making sure that they know they have the backing of the union. One of the reasons I'm backing Paul as well is because I've known him over the years. I know what he's like, hard work and absolutely dedicated. Any one of you have met him, you know, is what you see is what you get with Paul. I've never known anyone who's just as dedicated, as hard working to this union as Paul, in the way that he's just done everything he possibly can to represent members of his own branch, but also when he's served on the national bodies, make sure he's been our voice as well. Absolutely determined, absolutely committed. And as I say, very straightforward. That's the sort of General Secretary I want. I don't want, to be honest, I don't want any more bureaucrats. I'm not being disparaging on any individual, but I want someone who's a member. I want someone who's a lay member, someone who knows what we feel and knows what we need, and knows what it's like at the sharp end as well. And in that way, I think the future of our union will be assured, and we'll have a strong union. We'll grow, and we'll be more influential and more effective, and we'll play our role in wider societies. That's why I'm supporting Paul. And I've been chairing these meetings that we've been having over the last few weeks. And it's just been, for me, it's been fascinating listening to members' views and hearing what's happening on the ground. And then also listening to people's responses to Paul and his program. He'll set that out later, but the response so far has been overwhelming. People have said, this is exactly what we need, and this is the right person to, and have confidence in him being able to deliver it. So that's what these meetings are all about. And we invite a number of speakers just to set out their views on what's happening in the union, where we go forward, and Paul's campaign as well. So what I'd like to do is introduce a number of speakers before we actually then hear from Paul, and he'll set out his program and you'll be able to hear about that. And hopefully there'll be some time for questions at the end as well. So our first speaker is Joanne Moorcroft. She's branch secretary of the Cheshire Police branch. Joanne.
Thank you, John. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jo Moorcroft. I've worked in policing for 11 years and was elected as the branch secretary for Cheshire Police staff in 2017. I'm a member of our regional publicity and campaigning committee, the Women's Forum Labour Link Committee. I'm a deputy regional convener for the North West, and I'm also on our Police and Justice Service Group executive. I want to open up today by saying that the reason I'm here at this meeting is the same reason I became a shop steward, and that's I want to get what our members deserve. You will have seen what's been happening on our shop floor for the past 10 years. Our colleagues who go the extra mile to do right by the public, being beaten down and demoralised with a combination of job losses, ever-increasing workloads, and years of pay restraint. And you could be forgiven for missing that on the news because we've been all but absent from the national debate. This is despite police staff branches having high density levels in terms of UNISON and union membership. We've got politicians endlessly talking about police officer numbers. Cuts to police officer numbers tell less than half a story about what's been going on in our police service. A modern policing workforce is much more than warranted officers using enforcement powers. It's now made up of experts in vulnerability, safeguarding, crime prevention, investigations, counter-terrorism, to name a few. And yet we've seen these jobs perish under austerity because you can make police staff redundant, but only talk about maintaining our police officer numbers. The national debate has reinforced the message to the public that all we need is more cops, without a care for the rest of us. And what we're left with is a government pledge to drive up officer numbers. If those costs aren't met by government funds, who will pay the price? I can tell you now, we will. Often, police staff get written off as apathetic, unwilling to take collective action, small c conservative at best. But of course, that's the impression you'll get when they pay their subs every month, contribute to political funds, and yet watch their pay claim get tossed aside every year without any call to action. When they watch the debate about policing play out as though they don't exist. I am lucky to be a member of a branch that did ballot its members when there were attacks on conditions, and with that leadership was able to get an overwhelming majority for strike action and halt the attacks. As a branch, we continue in that vein. We hold public meetings with MPs that have included Laura Smith and Louise Haigh, and we give the public the uncensored truth about what is happening in our policing service. Our branch rejects all outsourcing and campaigned for our cleaners to be brought in-house and under the same national pay and conditions structure as the rest of us, achieving an incredible pay rise on day one, sick pay, holiday pay, and access to public sector pensions. When the Fire Brigade Union held a public demonstration against planned cuts to their service, our members stood alongside them. When Barnet Council and other workers have been taking action, our members contributed to the strike fund. We have shown what is possible when we organise and show leadership, when we empower our members to defend and advance their own interests as workers. What we need is a leadership that shares that commitment. That is why, and that is what we'll have with Paul. A radical shift in both resources and decision making to the shop floor, where the union centre exists to coordinate, plan and support our members' interests and our members' battles, not to pursue their own political interests. And that's why I'm supporting Paul Holmes in this election.
Thanks, Jo. Thanks. And I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the sincerity of your approach as well, because I think we need to be straight with people about what's gone on in recent years and the lack of, well, to be honest, at times the lack of support that there's been within the union on these particular areas, and the need that we want for a leadership that will give forthright support. That's what you're calling for, isn't it? And I fully agree. That's what Paul will deliver. Our next speaker is Sarah Carter. Sarah's a steward in the Force Control Centre. Sarah.
Hi, thank you. So, good evening. I'm Sarah Carter. I have worked in the police service for just over 15 years now. I was a control room operator for about 14 years until a recent move into training. So I've been an elected steward for the past 6 years, and I'm an active member of our branch. I'm currently the branch vice chair and educational officer. So I'm backing Paul because I want to see our union really pushing the boundaries of what we can achieve together. We've seen our national membership increase year on year, and yet that growth in membership numbers does not seem to be reflected in the strength in our voice on the national stage. So locally, we booked the national trend with our campaign and organising. Membership is going up instead of trickling down, despite the continuing cuts to police staff jobs throughout the years. We've got some serious challenges ahead with the economic aftermath of the COVID crisis. The government will no doubt look to make cuts where they can get away with it, and police staff seem to be an easy target. So my force has already shelved plans to increase police staff as a direct result of the police officer uplift and the reality of its underfunding. So for myself, I am a typical police staff member. I struggle to make ends meet, and I'm obviously facing possibility of job losses. The public don't seem to understand just how precarious it can be being a member of police staff. And obviously police staff are an integral part of the job. So what we need to do is we need to coordinate campaigns and action to meet the real, sorry about this, I've just got a little boy, just sorry, just go a minute, to meet the real challenges that lie ahead. We need a union, apologies, just one second. So we need a union, sorry everybody, that invests, this is typical working mum, invest in a lay activist, gives them the tools and resources to take on the government and its continued attack on our public services, including policing. The union isn't just an insurance policy to make sure that employers follow the letter of the law. It should be an organisation that empowers us to improve our pay conditions, to fight redundancies, and to raise the profile of the important work that we all do. So members have shown that they will take action when they have confidence in their union, and they not only back them, but they lead the charge, and that's what we need from our national leadership. So this is why I am supporting Paul Holmes. I believe that we are to be successful in the challenges that lay ahead. We need a leader who is committed to putting resources where they are needed most, and that is with the reps and the branches who are at the sharp end. So that is why I am supporting Paul Holmes. Thank you, and sorry about the interruption.
Sarah, that was fantastic. That was great. Okay. Can you thank your little one as well, because it's given us an entertaining evening too.
He's run back downstairs now. I've walked upstairs. Thank you.
Thank you.
I tell you, we've all had those experiences. I had my cat walk across the sofa I was being interviewed on at one point and started scratching me for food. And I thought, blimey, if I swat the cat, I'll be dead in the eyes of lots of animal rights activists and all the rest. Anyway, there you are. It all happens to us, don't worry. Anyway, thanks, Sarah, for that. That was really helpful. Our next speaker is Anne McIntyre. She's the Assistant Branch Secretary of Merseyside Police. Anne.
Hello, everybody.
My name's Anne McIntyre. I've worked for the police service for 13 years. 11 of those as a PCSO, which is a police community support officer. And for the last 2 years, I've been elected assistant branch secretary. Being a full-time branch officer and sitting on my regional police and justice service group has given me a real insight into the challenges our police and justice branches are facing. As an assistant branch secretary, I am more than aware of the budgeting constraints placed on our service and ultimately on our members. This has come into stark focus over the last couple of months with the police officers' uplift that hasn't had the funding and on-cost needs to support it. And it is actually taking police officers off the streets. As police staff roles will disappear or be de-civilianised to cover for the costs and savings, and we'll see police officers in our hard fought for police staff roles that will then be covered by police constables, as that is the grade that they are expecting to save the money for. As a PCSO, I am what's known as the Bobby on the beat. We are the people that know the communities, who've recognised how important it is to build good relationships with our residents. It is often said a good PCSO is worth their weight in gold. And that is quite right. Members of the public will tell a PCSO things that they will never ever tell a police officer, because that PCSO is seen as part of the community. As a police, but the morale at the moment has never been lower. In the whole 13 years, it's even lower now than it was in 2010 when the cuts started to really affect police staff. Being a member of police staff used to be a job for life. We know now it's not. We've had in the last 10 years real terms pay cuts, and know that police officer colleagues cannot be made redundant and their pay does not get cut. So when the axe falls, it always falls on police staff, either in cuts in terms and conditions or with job losses, which has happened to PCSOs all over the country. We have had our terms cut, we have had our shifts cut, we have had in certain areas just being got rid of completely. So what PCSOs want and need from the union leadership is someone who is connected with the real lives of ordinary members, someone who will give the branches the resources that they need. Money, yes, but also training and support. Someone who will involve the branches in deciding what we campaign on and how we campaign, and it doesn't come at the last minute from somewhere in headquarters. I'm supporting Paul in his bid to be our General Secretary because he understands how hard it is on the shop floor today. It is not that the members are angry or that they don't want to fight for their jobs or their pay. It's more that they're exhausted and busy working long hours, and they don't have the confidence that the muscle is there to win the fight. That's a dangerous place for us to be in, and we desperately need a General Secretary who understands what it's like and puts the union resources on the front line and puts our members at the heart of all decision making, and that is why I'm supporting Paul Holmes.
Thanks, Anne. Thanks very much. It's interesting you mentioned the issue of the stress PCSOs and others are under. It's the common theme right the way across the place. But in some areas, like my own constituency, they've got rid of them. It's been a disaster, a real setback, because they were at the grassroots of the community policing that we had. And as you say, in some instances, people will say to them what they won't to others. And I just think it's such a setback. It really is. And I'm hoping that we can win that argument back, to be honest. Anyway, thanks so much, Anne, for your contribution. Let's now go on to Paul, who's going to talk about why he's standing and his programme, the programme which he's standing at, which is proving to be incredibly popular with our members in the meetings that we've been having so far. Paul.
Thank you, Chair. I want to start off by saying I think of all the meetings we've had so far, and this is the 5th or the 6th meeting, I'm felt humble at every meeting because the speakers, the majority of whom I don't know, the speakers have said things that place some confidence in me that I want to live up to. I think that's really important because if you only live in some sort of bubble above society, then you believe what you read in the papers or you believe what somebody tells you real life's like. But I don't start my discussions from the basis of I used to live in a working class area, because I live in the same area that I lived in 50 years ago, and I'm more an ordinary working person. And I've been a member of UNISON for 40 years, been a UNISON steward for 40 years, been a branch secretary for 31 years of the 6th or 7th biggest branch in Britain, been an NEC member for 13 years, won 7 NEC elections. But more important than that, I know the people that we're talking about because I am one. I am one of those people. It's like Tommy Cooper once said, I like kids, I used to be one. So, of the 7 service groups in UNISON, I have been a branch secretary or a senior official in a branch. I've only been in 2 branches that covered 5 of them service groups. I've covered universities, police, water and environment, local government, the voluntary sector. And so when I became the sort of staff side vice chair in the West Yorkshire Algo branch, which I imagine would have been about 1983, I remember the first case I had in the police. I couldn't believe the case. I got a phone call. I were on duty that day taking calls, and we got a phone call from a police station in West Yorkshire to say that a member were being disciplined, and could I go and represent them? So I spoke to the member on the phone, excuse me, and I said to the member, is there a room for us to, there's £5 gone missing. And this, I said, how long have you been a member? She said, 32 years, I'm a secretary. Is there a room where you can interview me? I said, you can interview me in the room I'm in. So I said, well, what room are you in? And she was in a police cell. What they'd done was £5 had gone missing. So they just arrested her, put her in a cell, and we intended to discipline her. And I rang up the station and said to the senior police person we were working like, you can't just use a cell because you happen to have one handy. Our members have full police rights, full employee rights. And we went over and we sorted the case out. And so I've got a vast experience of the police. I was the vice chair of the staff side in 1984, 1985, during the miners' strike in Wakefield, which were obviously a difficult position to be in, given the tensions that were there then. But I think perhaps when I first learnt my biggest lesson about the police staff was I led would have been, I think, about 84 or 1985, the first ever police staff strike. We had a group of members, would have been 40 or 50 members, who were fingerprint officers in the West Yorkshire Police, who were absolutely fed up about the grading, the pay and the working conditions, the same as any other group of workers would be. And that strike was a groundbreaker. It made the headlines in the Financial Times. Thatcher criticised it in the cabinet meeting. But the members themselves were just a group of members who'd got fed up in the situation they found themselves in. Because they're ordinary workers. Police staff are ordinary workers faced with the same everyday problems that any trade union member feels in this country. And I'll never forget stood on the picket line with this lad on the first day. And this lad were well known as being very miserly. And he got 4 children, he got no money. And people were worried that he was going to go back to work. And he come over to see me, and it's the only time I've ever felt like laughing at a member, but I couldn't. And he said to me, Paul, I've done all my sums, and I don't think I can last on strike for more than a year. And I thought he was going to say a week. And I knew then that we were going to win that dispute. And why do I know that? And people have touched on it. All 3 speakers were great tonight, but people have touched on it, what they faced by. if you listen to some people in positions of power and positions of bureaucracy, our members are happy with the lot. They're absolutely not happy with the lot. Let's be really clear. There's very little happiness at work in the public sector at this moment in time. And what there is a massive workload for branches that they can't necessarily meet. Because, you know, if you went to the universities, you went to local government, you went to the health, they've all got pressures. The branch officers could have pressures of, even in police, we'll have pressures from outsourced services, people who are still in the branch. There's pressures from joint working with other local authorities on issues. The whole issue is one very similar. They're not different beasts in the police staff. They're faced with the same issues. Now the technology's changed and the range of jobs, like Joanne referred to earlier, changed. You know, when I were the branch secretary, there weren't police helicopters, there weren't this and that and the other people maintaining them and stuff like that. But the issues are the same. I could be the branch secretary of a police branch and recognise what our members were facing. And for my first commitment to deal with the pressures that our members are facing is that 50% of the subscriptions should go to the branch. Straight up, no arguing, because 90% of the work's done there. Everybody knows it's done there. In fact, the members will be shocked that 50% of the money isn't with the branches now, because that's what they look at. So, the 50% of the money goes to the branches, because Joanne's couldn't be more right. They're the ones in the branches that sends the messages of support to other branches. They're the ones that deal with the issues on the ground. They're the ones that use the issue, which this union won't use enough, which I call leverage. When we say to the employer, if that's your plan to outsource them or set up a special vehicle unit or privatise it, which is massive issues of outsourcing facing, if you want to cut your costs of your staff, then the one way to do that is to cut the pensions and the pay of the staff. So I'm standing on a worker's wage. My wage in Kirklees Council as a legal officer in the legal department is £32,000 a year. That's the wage I get for being branch secretary. And that's all the wage I want to be the general secretary. It's not because I'm a saint, not because I'm willing to make sacrifices that other people are. I don't comment on what salaries and wages other people take. But that £32,000 is the same wage I would get as the branch secretary, as I do get as the branch secretary. And hundreds of our branch secretaries in the branches do it on the basis of the salary that they would have got in the job that they're seconded from. And that makes you normal. That makes you understand the sort of speeches we've had here today. And I make a clear commitment on that. Because what's happened in our union, and it's a massive change, and I, perhaps at my age and my service, have seen it more than anybody else in the union. You know, this in the rule book, where it says we're a lay member-led union, very few of our activists think we're a lay member-led union. We're a union where increasingly we're told what to do, what we can and can't do. So, and the third ambition I've got is to make this this is what you can do union, not this is what you can't do union. And what you can do, if you're 50% of the subscription income that you've got, is start doing the sort of things that we need to be doing. We need to be leading from the front foot. We need to be saying to our members, like I say to any group of members when I go and meet them, they only ask you two questions. What's the plan? Have we got confidence in you to carry that plan out? And if you answer both them questions correctly, you'll get the support of members. And then you need the support of the union. Now, the branches and the members, it's all the union consists of. The regions, the national union, the legal, the welfare, Croydon Biology Centre, whatever there is, it's just support. It's so you can say that we will back you. And when employers say to us, which they do all the time now, all the legislation's changed, it takes longer to have a ballot, it takes longer to sort it out, that is not a problem. If the union say in reply, well, we'll start earlier then, we'll start the balloting process earlier. What we can't do is say, oh, the employer hasn't made the final offer yet. If you start balloting, they'll start making offers. If you don't start balloting, then it's a conversation, and every member understands that. When somebody comes forward with an outsourcing proposal, or a wage-cutting proposal, or a pension-cutting proposal, or a separate employer where you start on lower wages, the first response has got to be, we reject it. The second response is, what do the members think? What's the plan? Are you prepared to back us? And as soon as they've got confidence in us to do that, we go to the employer with our plan. I take great pleasure in showing them our plan. And this union, to use boxing parlance, is not leading on the front foot. He's not acting its size or its way, and it's got to fight its way. With 1.3 million members, there's no member out there sat there, we might be who's a chief officer or a chancellor of the university, there's no member out there thinking, oh, I've got a good wage, or I've got a good job, or I like a shift allowance. Those things are not there. Our members are struggling to make their life meet, and they're not going to spend the time coming to meetings to hear discussions that lead them nowhere. We've just had a situation in local government where we've accepted the local pay offer, the national pay offer. Well, we haven't accepted it. We haven't rejected it and said we'd do anything else. The members have said, look, you came to see us. We didn't agree with your plan. We didn't think you were serious about it. We might as well take the money because we'll lose 2 days in a strike, and that's the money we would have got in the rise. It wasn't worth fighting for. And you can see all these meetings that we're having. The majority of speakers, I don't know them. But I tell you what, every single one of them is worthy of being a leader in this union. And one of the promises I make is that we'll set up a leadership school and we'll say, I don't care what your politics are. I don't care if you agree with me or not. Have you got commitment? Have you got enthusiasm? Have you got zeal? Then you're for us. You can join our team. We want you on board in this team. There's no marking process. We'll say to the whole width of the union, the self-organised groups, all the service groups, look, if you're interested, we're not giving your life a misery where you've got a caseload that you can't meet. We're giving you a branch that's adequately resourced, and where in that branch, what you'll get is full-time officers asking you what you want, and you can contact other branches. This is going to end this. You can't contact that branch, or you can't speak to somebody in this branch, or that's outside the constitution. It's going to end. We don't live in the world that I lived in when I first started in local government, where appeals from the council went to the regional council and then went to the national joint council, where there was some sort of game taking place where everybody agreed the rules of the game. When we're firing and rehiring, like they are in Tower Hamlets, when we're firing and rehiring, like they're threatening in British Gas, when we're firing and rehiring, like they're threatened in the University of Sheffield, where UNISON have rebuffed and rebuilt that, then the gloves are off and you've got to fight your weight. There is no point in standing there and say, oh, you haven't got a very good argument. We need the argument with the public, but there's no, I get fed up of hearing this argument about the Tories. If they only knew the effect of the cuts, they wouldn't make them. They would make them. They don't care the effect of the cuts. They're of no consequence to them. And as all three speakers have said, our members in police staff do a really important job. They're trusted by the public. They do a wide variety of jobs, much wider than you would imagine. And they're the first people to be cut. And the reason for that is that basically, if you're the lower paid in the spectrum, whether you're at the university, whether you're in the council, whether you're in the police staff, whether you're in the health service, you can always afford a pay cut. You can always afford to work for less. You can always afford a smaller pension. And it's a way of looking down on people. Now, some people might get low paid in this country, but it doesn't mean they've got low self-worth or low esteem. It means the pay system is wrong. Oscar Wilde, when he came to this country from Ireland, said, it didn't take me 2 weeks to realise that everybody in England is paid in inverse proportion to the usefulness. That stuck in my head when I first recognised it 40 years ago. And in the COVID crisis, whether you're working in a private care home, whether you're working in the supermarket, whether you're sweeping the streets, whatever job you're doing that's been proven vital, you've proven to have a worth. The fact that somebody doesn't reflect that in the wage has got to change. And nobody sat about, nobody has said to me in the last 6 months, oh, I wonder how hedge fund managers are coping with the COVID crisis. I wonder how investment brokers are coping with the COVID crisis, because they're not essential to society. And we've got a union that's got to act as though it's got 1.3 million members. It's got to meet the aspirations of those 1.3 million members. In the last 20 years, we've never made an appearance on Question Time. When I asked Question Time about that, they said, we've made offers, we've given invites, the union has turned them down. Well, we won't be turning them down if I'm elected General Secretary. And it won't just be me that's appearing, because I'm firmly of the view, and this is the fourth part of my promise, that the Assistant General Secretaries and the Regional Secretaries should be elected as well, that there should be a clear divide in this union, between those who will work and employed and apply for jobs in the union, who are a great credit to this union. The people who are elected and lead the union should be accountable to the membership. And that's the assistant secretaries, the regional secretaries and the general secretary. And they should be appearing, not just me, the general secretary is not the king or queen of UNISON. What we want is to expand the teams everywhere, in the branches, in the regions, at national level. We want to make this a union. There's still people in Wakefield, I say this all the time, where I live, walking around with NUM badges on that have been left the pit 30 years because they were proud to be a member of that union. You know, often, you know, people don't say to me, I used to be a miner. They used to say, oh, we're in the NUM, as though that were the same thing, because they were proud to be it. And we need to create that atmosphere in UNISON. We need to say to people, look, the fact that the police staff is a smaller service group, 35, 40,000 people, is irrelevant. The size is irrelevant. Every single member is important. And it's easy to say that. It rolls off the tongue. Everybody's important. All lives matter. But to bring it into reality is different. And I say to all our members who are police staff, I know what your experiences are. I've been a branch secretary and a joint staff side vice chair where they are. I talk to ordinary people. And I know what ordinary people are thinking because I see them every single day in my life. They live all around me. They're on public transport with me. They're in the pubs and the clubs, the restaurants, wherever I am, talking to ordinary working people. I don't live in a vacuum. I live where ordinary working people. I know what their aspirations are. I know what they think about. And I finish on this point, really. I'm so pleased in this campaign, our campaign, not my campaign. Our campaign reflects the sort of people who've spoken at our meeting tonight because they're fed up. They want something different. They want change. They don't want some incremental change so they get 1 hour more facility time or they get another £100 for the branch funding. They want a radical change. They want to see changes in this union, the changes that I've laid out in my letter. I shouldn't say this at a public meeting, but I've heard people say to me, Paul, I think that letter's better than you. I think it's such a good letter. The things that we sent out to the branches, what we want to achieve. Well, I'm telling you, I haven't come to any of them things in the last 3 months and thought, oh, I ought to write something that's going to be popular with the members. That letter is my thoughts and feelings. That's what I truly and honestly believe. And if you vote and elect for me as General Secretary, that's what we will be arguing to implement. But we can only do that with the sort of people that's attending and speaking at this meeting tonight, representing all the members in every service group to improve the living standards of our members and be aspirational. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Paul, for that. Terrific. Thank you very much. Look, we've got time for a number of questions. We're all right on time. And we've got some cracking questions as well. So I'll put them to you, Paul. And Joanne and Sarah, your little helper, if you want to come in on any of these, by all means do so. Okay. Let me just run through them. The first question is, what can Paul do to really shift the debate away from being solely about police officer numbers? And how can he make sure the union works more closely with politicians who are sticking their neck on the line to insource and work with branches to fight for the lowest paid? It reflects a bit of what Joe and the others were saying as well. Paul, what do you think?
Yeah. Well, the first thing I want to say is, if anybody wants to come in, I'm really welcome that. But I also welcome not agreeing with me because it's about debating. It's about me learning as well as me giving out information or advice. The first thing is the profile of the union. We need to raise the profile. Our members don't think it's the biggest union in Britain because it doesn't act like the biggest union in Britain. And we've got to say we're big. As I said earlier, we're going to act big. And to do that, we've got to say that who's backing us. I don't like this pantomime debate in the media and this sort of, well, this politician's a goodie and this politician's a baddie, and which goodie or baddie does the General Secretary of the Union want to support? And this personality politics, which means nothing to our members. It means absolutely nothing. You know, most people in the RNT didn't vote for Bob Crow because they liked his personality. They voted for him because he met their aspirations. So I say, what the politicians who support us, this union's affiliated to the Labour Party. We should be saying to the politicians who support us, you've got our backing. And those politicians that support outsourcing, who don't give us their backing, well, we won't be supporting them. We'll be saying to the delegates that we elect from our branches, we want people who are in favour of the same trade union socialist policy that this union's got in it passes at conference. Now, we don't pass motions at conference so we can have a week away at the seaside. We pass motions at conference so they can be implemented. And part of that implementation is our representatives in Parliament, council chambers, mayoral chambers, should be taking into account what the affiliated unions think. And if they're not, we've got to be clear. We're in favour of open selection. We're in favour of removing them. Not because they're good or bad or whatever, because they're not delivering the goods for the members. The members pay the subscriptions. It's their money. They give us that money to look after them, not to look after politicians.
Thanks, Paul. Joe, Anne or Sarah, do any of you want to come in on that?
I think Paul's right what he's saying. And the sad thing is, you know, these MPs, you see them using the opportunity to go and have a photo shoot with police officers all the time. And occasionally you might see a PCSO in there, and half the time it's because they don't recognise them as being police staff. But, you know, I think the narrative has to change. Paul's right, police staff are ordinary people. They're ordinary people with ordinary lives. They just happen to have an extraordinary job. But we don't treat them like they have that extraordinary job. We just forget about them. The narrative needs to change, and we need to be holding our politicians to account. And the bit that for me is, you know, Cheshire Police Branch is a fairly small branch, little rural branch, but we managed to get the Shadow Policing Minister, Louise Haigh, and we managed to get Laura Smith, along with our Police and Crime Commissioner, along to a public debate so that we could thrash out actually what's been happening. And that, you know, one afternoon in the middle of September, one morning, a couple of hours, it made a difference, because less than a week later, one of those people challenged the Chancellor directly on the floor of Parliament. Now, and that annoys me to think that we've done that and we've got less than 1,100 members. And yet there's 1.3 million members of UNISON. Police and justice are, you know, it's 1,000 members a branch probably on average, and then probation on top of that. So you're talking probably near 90,000, 80,000 members. And yet it took a little branch to do something about that. And that's the bit I find annoying.
Thanks, that's great. If I go to the next question, how can the union work with other organisations, such as We Own It, to campaign effectively for properly funded, democratically accountable, truly publicly owned local services? And how do we then ensure our members are part of that campaign? For those people who don't know, We Own It is a small campaigning, well, actually it's not small, I think it's quite big campaigning organisation, and it started. It was started by a group of young women, actually, Kath Hobbs, down in Bristol. They were running a campaign, bringing passengers together against fare rises and in favour of bringing rail back into public ownership. And then they set up We Own It, which is about public ownership overall. So they campaigned against privatisation and for public ownership, supporting trade union campaigns as well. It's a very effective campaign. Paul.
Yeah. Well, the one word that I haven't mentioned today, or I haven't mentioned as much as I often mention it, but it's I think it's the number one word, is democracy. Democracy means who pays for something, who elects those who run it, and who can remove those who are running it badly. And it's a word that we don't use often enough. I get fed up of hearing managers saying, oh, it's be cheaper in an arm's length company. Oh, absolutely, we could put it into a trust and we wouldn't have to pay VAT, or we could put it here or we could put it there. Nobody ever talks about the democracy of the situation, and that's the key to the situation. Because I believe in society. As a society, we should decide what it is that we think should be provided. We should decide what we think it should be run, and we should own it, because you can't run it if you don't own it. You know, and everybody's heard these stories. I've just used one, but everybody's heard them. You know, we've got all these nationalised railways in this country, but they're not ours. They're nationalised from other countries. And people realise that you can't control what you don't own. And we need to talk about not just it being in-house, which we all want, but we want it under democratic control. I use this story because it impacted on me so much. Somebody brought into our UNISON office the 1954 Huddersfield Council yearbook about the services at Huddersfield Council, which were a Tory council, always what? Tory or Tory Liberal, ran in 1954. And Huddersfield Council in 1954 was a police authority, a fire authority, a hospital authority, a water authority. It ran all the services that we currently run now, with more besides. And that was the local council that was Tory. Dewsbury Council, a council 5, 6, 7 miles away from the Huddersfield Council border, ran them sort of services, but they had a power station. They owned a power station in Ravensthorpe where they bought coal, produced electricity, powered children's homes, old people's homes, council buildings, and sold it to 7 other local authorities as well. And we think too small. We're endlessly thinking. Managers are always saying to us, oh, we have to get this sort of vehicle because we haven't got one. But this private contractor can provide one. Now, that vehicle is always a vehicle that somebody at their golf club or their round table can provide. Now, I always say, if Dewsbury Council could produce electricity from a power station, why does this council need to buy to rent a certain bin wagon or a certain highways white lining vehicle? The reason is because that's what they want to do. And we need to say to people, there's a vaster range of services that the police staff or the council or the health authority could provide, but them services will be provided in-house. They'll be provided with proper rates of pay. Your relatives and yourself will be looked after, and you'll be able to elect those who are running them places. Now, what we've done is in council after council after council, they've got rid of private care homes, given them to people in the city. They're often owned by hedge funds and investment brokers, people in the city, multinational companies own them. And then our relatives, elderly relatives, are treated badly in them or abandoned like they were in coronavirus. The staff are on dirt paid wages, no trade union recognition, and no collective bargaining rights. And then there's this sort of false pantomime horror that something's gone wrong. Something hasn't gone wrong. It's a deliberate action to abandon those people and those services. And we that work in them services, not Paul Holmes, the General Secretary, not the Assistant General Secretaries, but those representatives who work in them services should be able to stand up and say what's happening. And when they do stand up and say what's happening, that we want the local authority to run care homes, then we will back them stewards if anybody threatens them. We won't be saying, oh, I don't mind who runs it as long as they collect subscriptions and send them to headquarters. I do mind who runs it. I absolutely do mind. I want it to be run, paid for by the community, on behalf of the community, and every penny that goes into it is gone into wages and services.
Anne or Sarah, do you want to comment at all?
Only I agree 100%. That's
Yeah.
how it should be.
Yeah. The care homes example is, I think, one of the worst as well. In my constituency, we had Southern Cross that went bust. Can you remember that?
Yeah.
And the Tory council had sold off virtually all public provision. So we were in a desperate state of where people would receive their care. And it was just, I have to say, it was appalling. And it's one of the areas that Paul has raised as where we should be organising. And it's where we should be introduced sectoral collective bargaining as well now too. Another question, if I can just go through the last couple of questions. It's a good one. How do we equip our branches to take action given the issues with national strike thresholds we have now? That's been submitted, Paul.
Well, we start from behind the starting line because the Labour government from 1997 to 2010 didn't repeal one single piece of legislation. And what they should have been saying is it's all going to go. We're going to talk to the unions about the industrial relations legislation that we see in place. We used to have one hand tied behind his back. We've got two hands tied behind his back now. But the thresholds are not a problem if the union is serious about the dispute. They're not a problem. I think some people in this union like saying, oh, unfortunately, we didn't meet the threshold. I think some people secretly like the thresholds. Well, you tell you what, our members don't like the thresholds. They might like them in theory when somebody's discussing them, but the minute they're faced with a problem in front of them and somebody tells them it's 7 weeks before we can do anything about it because we've got to ballot, and even then, if we don't get this or that percentage, we can't strike. But I tell you what, the employers can do what they want, when they want. It makes no difference to them. And there's always, every bit of legislation I've ever read about protection for workers in front of bosses, always says in it, provided that you can do this if you've got business reasons to doing it. Well, I often say to managers, you keep going on about your business reasons. I'd like to discuss our members' business reasons. I want to talk about their bank accounts. I want to talk about their ability to conduct their lives with the money that they've got, because that's their business, trying to look after their families. And they're not interested in that. But if you say to the members, I can repeat it ad nauseum, if you explain to them what the plan is, if they've got confidence you carry it out, you'll get the percentages. You know, the big 3 disputes we've had in Kirklees over the last 5 or 6 years, it involved over 1,000 members. All 3 strikes had big yes votes and massive turnouts. The racial harassment bin strike and bullying bin strike in Kirklees in 2018, we got a 92% turnout and an 88% yes vote. And if you convince the members that you're serious about what you want to do, if you're convinced the members that you can win that dispute and they're serious about winning it, you don't have to take the strike action, because the minute the branch says, right, we're going for it now, are you backing us? Yeah, we're backing for it. We'll have a consultative ballot there and then. You print that and you say, you talk to us or else we're starting the process. And everybody who's been involved with members knows this to be true. If you get to the point of the dispute and they've messed you about for weeks, the dispute is harder to settle. Once the members have crossed the Rubicon to the first day of coming out on strike, then the dispute is harder to settle. So we need to send the message out that we're serious, that getting the thresholds won't be a problem. And it won't be if the members believe we're serious. If the members believe they're going to get more earnings, we're going to protect their pension, they will be 100% behind getting them ballot results.
Let me try and just see if we can get through these last couple of questions, because they've been really good, the ones that have been submitted. This question says, collective bargaining is important and valuable, and we must defend it, but that means pay disputes must be backed up by a national mandate for action. How can we coordinate intelligently to build a movement to smash pay restraint for public sector workers and restore confidence in the union's ability to deliver? Well, it is a good question, because whilst we sometimes don't act nationally, the employers do. They meet as employers, they get legal advice as employers, and they discuss. Let's be really clear. When anybody who read the Ridley plan before the miners' strike knows how the government, the Tory government's plan their attack on the trade unions. And the attack, what they tried to convince us of in the 70s and 80s, well, the attack on the trade unions was some attack on some cartoon characters who ate sandwiches and drank beer in TUC headquarters. What the attack was on was your wage rates, or your job security, or your ability to leave your job because you were being bullied and get another job. So we have to be as serious, get the same advice and act nationally as the employers do. And they put a smokescreen in front of us that they are acting independently. They are not acting independently. Their advice to the government, their request to the government on anti-trade union legislation is a complete collective bargaining issue as far as they're concerned. I've never heard an employer say, oh, I don't like the Tories legislation on industrial action. I think it should be more swinging towards the employees. It never happens. And we've got to come back with the same planning
and the same seriousness as they have. And one of the reasons it's difficult is the democracy of the union. If the union is responsive and open and democratic to the members, and it's not being policed, then the members will back the union. Then we can have national planning. And we've got to have people standing up at conference who are in the leadership of this union, whether it's the service group conferences or the national delegate conference. We've got to have people standing up and say, we have changed now from a can't do union to a can do union.
Thanks, Paul. Final question, and I wouldn't mind if everyone came in on this one. How do we do more to help bring on new activists in police branches who can help energize campaigning? If I bring in Joe, or Anne, or Sarah, if any of you want to comment on that before I bring Paul in.
I think organising is the key to it. I think in the Northwest, we're very fortunate to have launched our Organising Academy, bring people in and talk to them about, you know, what they can do in their branches, how they can stimulate that conversation. I think, you know, we're unique really in that way, and I think we've got to change the message. I mean, a lot of members see actually you're just a servicing union, you know. When are you doing, you know, there's nothing else going on than I use you for me insurance, I use you for that type of thing. We need to educate our activists, get them organised, let them understand that actually they are the union, they are the people that make the difference, not anybody else. It's all down to them. It's like, I always liken it to an upside down tree, and the roots are the members, and they really should be placed at the top. We need, and a term I always use when on the Organising Academy is we need to make them enthusiastic rage at what's happening to them, and put that fire in the belly and make them understand that actually you can do something about this. And we need to make sure that we put more effort into it and more money and resources into organising at that very level.
Thanks. Anne, do you want to comment at all?
Yeah, what we really do need to do is have some saying here. We have to have the resources to be able to do it. We have to be able to get out there and get our members involved. And I must admit, it's a hard thing to do. It really is a hard thing to do. We need to somehow do it, and having ideas about how to do it. I mean, we have an ageing population in our branches, so it's very hard to get a young member to get them involved. So that's what we need to do. We need to try and get some young members in, and get somebody enthusiastic who will organise. At the moment, we've got a couple that will do stuff, but we need to do it with the young members. COVID hasn't helped much.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
We need to do something, and I must admit, I'm open to any ideas.
Exactly. Sarah, do you want to comment?
No, not really. Sorry, I'm in dark because I'm just trying to put my little boy to bed.
Oh,
so it's okay. I'm just really mirroring what Joe said, 100% around the campaign and stuff. But yeah, that's all from me, really.
Thanks, Sarah, and wish him good night from us, okay? Sweet dreams.
Thank you.
Paul.
Yeah, well, it's about class, isn't it? And we've got a living example of that during this meeting tonight. I were reading the Financial Times the other day, and I were reading this article about what problems this woman were having, this mother were having, as during the COVID crisis. And I got drawn into this article in the colour supplement, thinking, oh, you know, you start feeling sympathy. And then this woman said, well, the biggest problem facing me in COVID was when my nanny was furloughed. And then I suddenly realised I was reading an article that I didn't want to continue reading. And we've seen the pressure that one of our stewards has been under tonight, and that is not uncommon about activity. And we've got to understand how ordinary union representatives are. Now, I learned this lesson a long time. I say every meeting, I learned more from speaking to other branch secretaries than they learned from me. And I went to Bolton branch in the Northwest, would have been 10, 12 years ago. and they did a steward's induction course. And I'd never thought of that. And it wasn't a steward's induction course for like law training or welfare training or health and safety training. You could have entitled it, "What is a steward?" And there are loads of people who have some enthusiasm to do something, but they don't know how to do it. And I would bet you, when I did that steward's induction course, I stole that idea off the Bolton branch, and that has worked fantastic. And the first question everybody says, who's normal and working class, when they come into that steward's induction course is, I don't mind what I'm doing if I know what I'm doing. And that is about instilling confidence in people. Because when you've had 2 or 3 hours speaking to them people, they'll be better stewards than you would have been. I watch them in amazement sometimes and think, why haven't I thought of that? I've been a steward for 40 years. And they've got so much to offer. I'm a socialist and a trade unionist. And the reason I'm a socialist is I think ordinary working people can do every job. And they're not given that opportunity to do it. But when you actually encourage people and talent spot, they've actually got so much to offer. I'm thinking, God, they're better than I was when I was 21. But they don't think that. They think, how do you know so much, Paul? Well, I've been a steward for 40 years. If you don't know a lot, it's a poor show. So for me, what you do is you say to people, I've been around 40 years. These are the experiences I've had. These are the victories that we won and the battles we fought. And this is how we did them. And I want you to come on board, because if there's more of you, we'll win more victories. And, you know, a lot of people watching this won't remember this. But on Up Pompeii, I don't know if anybody can remember Up Pompeii with Frankie Howard. There used to be this woman running behind him all the time in the forum saying, woe is me, everything is dismal. And that's the exact opposite of what the union's about. The union is about, actually, we can live a better life. We can get a decent standard of living. But we do that not by climbing up the greasy pole ourselves, but explaining to everybody that as a collective, we can do that achievement. And that's how you do it. Success breeds success in trade unionism. It's not a defensive mechanism. It should be an aspirational mechanism.
Well, let's thank everyone who's attended tonight. I'm really grateful. Paul, have you any final words just before we close the meeting about where next? What we need people to do?
Well, once again, John, really would like to thank you for chairing the meeting in the excellent way that you do chair it. And I wouldn't say that if I didn't believe it. Where next? We've now got over 50 nominations for the General Secretary. It looks like we're going to get 60 or 70. So we're going to be a runner in this election. But this election is nothing. If we elect a General Secretary that's surrounded by people who don't share the vision that we put forward in this campaign, we won't improve the living standards of the members. So to everybody that's listening, everybody that's in a branch, if you're a non-member or a member, get involved in the union. If you're not a member, if you're in another area of work, join that union. But this is our campaign. It's not my campaign. And the celebrations, if we win this election, should be for everybody on the basis that we're then going to create a vehicle to take this union forward. Thank you.
Thanks, Paul. Can I thank everyone for attending tonight? It's been really good. It's been really helpful. And also, can I just ask everybody to talk to other members of the union now? This is the most important, I've said it before, it's the most important election in our union in generations. It will determine the future of our union. So please, please talk to other UNISON members, explain about Paul's candidature and seek their support. Thanks for coming tonight, and thanks for all the organisers as well who've helped us. All the best.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.